Welcome back to the swamp, my friends. It's good to see you made it back for another episode of Cryptid Encounter Horror Stories here with your host, Swamp Dweller. Great to see you all back, my friends. Today, these stories of course come in from viewers just like you. These are all claimed to be allegedly true by those who sent them in, so of course take them with a grain of salt, but also let your mind wander. Anyways, without further ado, let's jump right into these creepy stories that'll freak you out tonight. What's up, swamp folk? Make this your best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Eating well has never been this easy. Just heat up and enjoy it, giving you more time to do what you want. Get outside instead of prepping and cooking indoors. Factor meals arrive fresh and ready to eat. Perfect for any active lifestyle like myself. I'm constantly out there hiking in the woods trying to find a Bigfoot to slap up. With 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. I've been using Factor for quite some time now, and I'm a massive fan. It's helped me be able to keep up with my gym grind and my active lifestyle. So, what are you waiting for? Get started at factormeals.com/swamped50off and use code SWAMPED50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Again, that's code SWAMPED50off at factor.com/swamped50off for 50% off plus free shipping. I was raised on a farm in rural southeast Kansas, where the large wildlife consisted of deer, lots of deer, bobcats, coyotes, the occasional bear sighting, and the most elusive of all, mountain lions. Also known as cougars, big cats, or even panthers, these predators were rarely seen, yet their presence was undeniable. Hunting cameras captured fleeting images, injured livestock bore the evidence of their attacks, and on eerie nights, their piercing screams echoed through the wilderness. My family as cattle owners experienced this firsthand. One of our cows was found with deep, jagged claw marks raked across the sides of their neck, classic signs of a mountain lion attack. The predator had struck from above, its primal hunting method. This is the story of my close encounter with an elusive big cat. But this isn't no normal mountain lion. There was something different about this. My parents' farm was located along a blacktop road near a quiet rural intersection. Gravel roads stretched between crop fields, pastures, and scattered homesteads. These low-traveled roads made for peaceful walks and jogs, which I regularly partook in. My usual route followed a stretch of road flanked by tall cornfields extending over a block before reaching the first home. After that, the landscape returned to fields and woodlands, with another house in the distance. That second house marked my turnaround point, not by choice, but because an aggressive dog lived there. It would snarl, and it would charge if I got too close, so I pivoted before reaching the driveway. This evening, the air was warm and the corn was beginning its seasonal transformation from lush green to crisp brown, signaling the coming harvest. As I entered the stretch with cornfields on both sides, I suddenly felt uneasy. The unmistakable sensation of being watched by someone or something. I kept walking, my senses on absolute high alert. Then, a rustling in the cornfield to my left made me turn my head. At first, I saw only movement, a low, slinking shape weaving through the stalks. A dog? No. As it moved, more of its body became visible. Long, sleek, and powerful. Its short coat shimmered in the fading light. A mountain lion, I think. Adrenaline surged through me. I was being stalked. Exposed, vulnerable, every instinct screamed at me to run, but I knew better than that. Running would trigger its predatory response. Instead, I fixed my eyes on the house just beyond the field. That was my goal. I forced myself to maintain a steady but brisk pace, resisting the urge to bolt. The cougar stayed parallel to me, hidden within the corn, shadowing my every step. When I finally passed the edge of the field, relief flooded me. The cat remained inside the cover of the stalks, but my ordeal was not over yet. No, not quite. The homeowners were gone. No phone to borrow, no car to take me home. Turning back was absolutely not an option. Not yet. I pressed on towards the next house, even knowing the aggressive dog awaited me. When I reached its property, I hesitated. I didn't know the owners and wasn't eager to trade one danger for another. Instead, I turned around, retracing my path. This time, as I approached the cornfields, I walked faster, more intentional, and just as before, the mountain lion had reappeared. It moved with me, never fully emerging, but never retreating either. I never let my pace down. Something that kept me even more alert was that this thing seemingly was the color of the darkness. It was blending in with the shadows. That's the biggest reason why I scratched my head wondering if this was actually a mountain lion or something different. My pace never faltered. I focused only on getting past those fields, maintaining the same strategy that had kept me safe. When I had finally cleared that final stretch of corn and reached the open road home, I exhaled, my pulse still racing. Now, I never take those walks unprepared. I always have a cell phone, a small knife, and a lesson was entirely learned that day. I was hunted. By what? I'm not 100% sure, but I was hunted. I left the military in 1995 and moved to Colorado a couple of years later. My buddy also moved from California to the same area. We spent a lot of time outdoors, fishing, camping, snowboarding, and downhill mountain biking. One day, my buddy and I were heading up to go fishing at Cheeseman Reservoir near Deckers. We decided to change plans and explore somewhere else as we got close. While driving through the mountains, we found a narrow, single-track road and, for whatever reason, decided to take it. About 2 miles in, a camper shell, or topper, suddenly flew out in front of our truck. I slammed on the brakes. We stared at each other confused, like what the hell had just happened? I told him we needed to get out of there and move the shell off the road so we could keep going. I started getting out of the truck, but he wouldn't budge. I figured maybe he couldn't open his door because of the tight space on the single-track road. Luckily, the shell had landed on its roof, so I managed to drag it off the road by myself. I returned to the truck and we continued until we ended up at Wellington Reserve near Bailey, Colorado. We fished there for a bit but didn't have much luck. The strange thing was that my buddy was acting off the entire time we were there, talking to himself. Every now and then I'd ask if he had something to say to me, but he would just say no. So now I'm feeling completely uneasy. We eventually drove home. I lived in Castle Rock and he lived in Colorado Springs. Usually I'd hear from him a couple of times a week to make plans for the weekend. But after that day, I didn't hear from him for about 2 months. When I tried calling, he just wouldn't answer. Eventually he asked if I could come to the Springs to help clean the carpets at his townhome. I went and we started talking. He suddenly said, "What do you think about what we saw?" I had no idea what he was talking about. I asked him what he meant and he explained. He told me that when the camper shell flew in front of the truck and I got out to move it, he was about to get out too until he looked over and saw something standing there. He said it was about 9 or 10 feet tall. It looked at him and he looked at it. Then in just 3 steps it turned and disappeared into the brush. He said that's why he didn't get out of the truck. He was terrified. When I didn't hear from him for 2 months, he told me he hadn't slept at all. Not a single wink. Eventually, he packed up and moved back to California. Now he lives in Texas. We talk every now and then, but, he won't really discuss that day. Not at all. I believe him. I do. I didn't see anything or smell anything unusual that day, but I believe he saw a 10-foot-tall Bigfoot standing there. And while I was outside pulling the shell off the road, he didn't say a word about what he saw. He hasn't been the same since. Hi, Swamp Dweller. It's been about a month since I last sent in a story about some unusual experiences I've been having. Recently, I've been having crazier things happen on my property. I live in one of the most secluded areas in Georgia. It's nice and private, settling on a few thousand acres with about a 250-acre lake and no neighbors except the local wildlife. It's been family-owned since 1810, as houses have been built and rebuilt. I have had to do further research to discover why these experiences are happening to me and my family. It always appears safe during the daytime, but becomes incredibly different when night comes. During my research, I discovered this property was once a hideout for a local Cherokee tribe. Occasionally, I hear knocking on wood, knocking on the house, possible rocks being thrown below the windows, and so on. My last experience was just last night when the sun was almost out of sight. Coyotes just started becoming more active. I hear them howling and the birds are always whistling. It came to a point when all the animals suddenly went quiet, and the only thing I heard was footsteps crunching on leaves. There are no bears in this area of Georgia, but whatever it was huge, and our giant animal is usually a deer. This is central Georgia, not too far south of Lake Sinclair. We don't really have alligators either. I could scratch off every possible animal because those footsteps were massive. You would know it was much louder than any known animal if you heard them, like an elephant walking through. The footsteps finally stopped about 30 yards into the thick woods. The next thing I hear is what sounded like some kind of gibberish ritual, but it wasn't quite in words. I had never heard anything like this before. Even my wife heard it, and we were both on the upper back porch. We like to sit down and enjoy the sun setting to the west side of the lake, but it was already completely dark when we heard this thing speaking in what I can only assume was tongues. I tried using a battery-powered spotlight to see where this thing was, but with no success, as it kept saying something over and over. The next thing I know, something was thrown towards us, landing on the porch. It was about 2 to 3 pounds. It was a rock, and it was pretty big. I picked it up carefully and placed it on a small sandwich bag. It might have had some sort of fingerprint evidence, I don't know. I turned it over to professionals to get a good look at it, but I don't think anything really ever came of it. I know it might sound weird to do that, but I need to find out what's going on here and what this creature is. Earlier this morning, I began searching for professionals and only found something called cryptozoologist. Since no other known studies are based on this experience, I never told my daughters or my family about this because they wouldn't understand. My daughters are only 5 years old, and I don't want them to be traumatized by this. When cryptozoology appeared on my computer, it talked about the legendary Bigfoot, their biggest passion, and a few others known as cryptids. I'm hoping to go into the woods with my wife tomorrow to see if I can find any fingerprints, and I would love to share some pics with you if we can get anything on camera. Now before I begin this story, let me first start by clarifying that alligators are not native to Michigan, which is what made me so skeptical about believing this legend until I had an in-person encounter with him. The Michigan Gator Man. A little backstory on my family. We recently purchased a house in a small town in Michigan's Upper Thumb. Caseville, Michigan was a quiet beach town famously known for its cheeseburger festival. It seemed like a family-friendly town and a perfect place to spend summers. Everything was excellent the first year or so of living there, and then we began to hear whispers around town about the legend of what I was supposed to believe was the Gator Man. We figured it was some form of hazing that people did to new people in town and brushed it off. On the 4th of July, the town had fireworks, and about 12 of us decided to sit on the sand to view them. Our street had access to a private beach, so we were the only ones there that night. Everyone else was on the public side of the beach in the distance. My cousins and I were having a great time actually, dancing to the music and just goofing off in general. Then, we hear something coming towards us in the distance. It's a low growling sound. We stare, but we don't see much because it's very dark along the water. Either way, there's a big group of us, so we weren't too terribly threatened by it. At this point, the crickets stopped chirping, and any voices in the distance became muted. Even the waves of Lake Huron seemed to hush. It became dead silent. My cousin Kurt points toward a low growling sound, and he says that there were two yellow glowing eyes growing in size as something was coming towards us. The loud crash of fireworks pulled our attention away from whatever it was, and when we looked back, it was seemingly gone. We began watching the fireworks show and soon forgot all about it. Our attention is pulled away from the fireworks as sand flies over our heads from behind us. All of us whip our heads around to see it. A figure of a man stands in the dark. Only once the flash of fireworks illuminates him enough to see what he truly is. His skin seemed to glow in the light. He looked skinny, almost scaly. We couldn't get a great look at him because of our light source. It was flashing in and out, of course. The grand finale of the fireworks began and we glanced away for just a split second. And suddenly, a splash of the water happened. This weird man was gone. After the fireworks show ended, we all decided this was pretty creepy and didn't stay at the beach for much longer. I tried to rationalize how he looked in the light, and maybe just thought he had a nasty sunburn or some sort of, skin burns or something like that. The following day, we headed back to the beach to look for any evidence that could bring some sense to the situation, and just to be safe, we got our dog with us. What we found made our skin crawl. Leading from the sand to the water was what I could only describe as gator tracks. But here's the kicker. A piece of driftwood was floating in the water next to where the tracks led, and it looked to have some sort of odd scratches and bite marks on it. I moved to get a closer look, and my dog instantly began growling and refused to walk any closer. This made me uncomfortable enough to listen and to head back to the house as fast as possible and get as far away from these tracks as I could. That night, my cousin and I decided to go back to the beach for an evening swim, but mostly to look for the gator man. I now understand that this wasn't the brightest idea, but we were bored and wanted to figure this thing out. We reached the sand, using our phone flashlights to look for any sort of evidence, but we didn't find anything interesting, so we swam in the water. We were in the water until our cousin felt something brush up against her leg. As our initial shock was settling in, our eyes began adjusting to the dark water. We saw some air bubbles and immediately felt the tension in the air. A tall figure slowly emerges from the water in the moon's light. Those same yellow glowing eyes met mine for a not so appreciated second time. He was angry, and we needed to leave this water. We knew immediately this was his beach, and he had the upper hand, especially in the water. We booked it back to the house, never looking back to see if it was following us. I still can't visit that beach to this day. I still see those glowing yellow eyes when I close my own. I don't know what the Michigan Gator Man wants, but I feel sorry for those who find out. Hey Swamp Dweller, my name is Pam. I live on the northeast corner of Mississippi, less than 10 miles from the Tennessee and Alabama state lines, and 70 miles from the infamous Taylor, Mississippi. My granddaughter, who is 11 years old, had an encounter with the cryptid a few months ago. Let me describe what happened and what she witnessed. Sometime around 11 p.m. we returned home from the county fair here in Alcorn County, Mississippi. My home is approximately 6 miles from town in a relatively rural area containing lakes, trees, and fields used for anything from tomatoes to soybeans and even cotton. My land is almost 20 acres. We have our home, a barn, a shed, and a lake about 200 yards from my house. The rest is trees and a few cleared out pieces. Anyway, back to Saturday night. My granddaughter, A, decided to walk outside to find her kitty before she went to bed. My husband and I were already in bed, and why she went out without waking one of us shocked me, but she didn't wake any of us up. She didn't even wake us up when she returned after seeing this thing. She did get in bed with us and slept with us that night and the next night. However, the following day, while fixing breakfast, she walked into the kitchen and said, "Mama Pam, y'all have some kind of strange dog out there." I asked her what she was talking about, and here is her answer. "When I went outside to find Kitty, I started walking to the front yard and saw something huge and white. I thought it was a dog, but when I got closer, It looked more like an old, bad, skinny grandpa. He was walking on his hands and legs, and then it got up on its back 2 legs. It looked around and it saw me. Then it ran toward the barn. Mama Pam, I ain't never seen anything run that fast. I asked her if she had seen the face of this thing, but she told me that she did not. She didn't get to see it long enough to see any real features. She said it only looked toward her for just a few seconds, and it was too dark to make out any discernible facial features besides that it was bald. I know my eyes were as big as saucers. I knew what she had seen wasn't anything from around here. She told me it was very skinny and again bald, and it looked like it had trouble even walking on all 4s, making it hard for her to believe that it could run so fast. She said on all 4s it was jerky, but it wasn't like that when it was on just 2 legs. I told them I thought it was a crawler, and could not believe she didn't come screaming for me and my husband to wake up. She said at the time, and in her 11-year-old mind, she didn't consider it harmful because it was frail and seemed to have such a hard time walking. But she did say that when it took off toward the barn, it was lightning fast. She said that's when she got nervous. She returned to bed with my husband and me when she saw how fast it actually was. I know she's telling me the truth because she's never been exposed to anything that would even remotely give her an idea for this story. Not to mention, she doesn't really lie, to be honest, and she slept with me and my husband for the next few nights as well. She's really not a kid to make up things. She's down to earth, a cheerleader, a soccer player, a softball player, and an all-around, well-rounded kid. I hope somebody listening to this in the swamp can answer these following questions. Have any of you ever heard these creatures anywhere else around Mississippi, Tennessee, or the Alabama areas? She has a 4-wheeler, a bicycle, and does a lot of outdoor activities. I'm scared to let her go do those now. Are we in danger? Thanks for sharing my story. Too afraid to go outside by myself now as well. Many people believe what they perceive in the world is reality. Everything they see, touch, smell, and hear is real, and will always be real. This always goes for things that they don't believe in. We live in a world where they no longer fear the monsters in the dark, believing we have discovered all the apex predators of the world, such as the sharks, the orcas, the bears, the wolves, and large cats, and we believe we are on the top of the food chain. While it is true, we currently have no natural predators, we are merely prey of opportunity. This doesn't change the fact that we are prey nonetheless. One doesn't get to experience the feeling of being hunted, of being stalked like a wolf stalks an elk. The feeling of dread you feel as the eyes of a predator are staring into you, waiting for you to make one wrong move. I was 14 at the time. I had short black hair and braces that made me look like the biggest dork you have ever met in your life. Funny enough, I was. While I played lacrosse and was semi-athletic, what I lacked in coordination and speed I made up for with a deceiving amount of brute strength, an amount that didn't make sense for my small stature. I was in Phoenix, Arizona for my annual summer trip to visit my grandparents on my father's side of the family. My grandparents seemed like opposites. My grandfather is a tall, semi-muscular man, standing at 6 feet 6 inches in height and weighing easily over 190 pounds, who never seemed to take anything seriously and loved to crack joke and tease others. My grandmother was tall for a woman, standing at easily 5 feet 9 inches, was rather skinny. She didn't make jokes often, but always seemed to laugh at my grandfather's jokes. The only similarities I ever felt like they really shared was their love for their family, and their love for going on walks and hiking. They also owned a beautiful dog named Lucy. Lucy was a rescue when my grandparents got her, and such, she came with her own issues. She wasn't fond of bigger men and hated big dogs, yet somehow that didn't seem to stop her from loving any of the men in my family, including my grandfather. If you saw Lucy from a distance, you'd think it was just a large fox. Her fur was the orange color foxes have, and her tail looked just like a fox. In truth, no one knew what breed she was. Even after having become a registered veterinarian assistant, I still have no good guess. The only thing I know for sure is that she at least shares some part of German Shepherd, as she shares the same common characteristics they have, including the medium size, pointy ears, snout, and her love and undying devotion to her owners. The morning after I arrived at my grandmother's, They told me that they were going to hike up Camelback Mountain, a mountain that got its name for looking like a camel's hump. I hated the idea of doing this. Like most high schoolers, I just wanted to lay in bed and watch YouTube, especially since this would be the first year I didn't have my brother Jalen to keep me company. Jalen was my older brother, who had 6 years on me. He had just turned 20 and decided he needed to work to save up money for when he goes back to campus, leaving me to go on a trip by himself. I wasn't upset. Obviously, this is a decision he needed to make, but I was sad about it. Up until 8th grade, he had been my only real friend that I could really rely on and open up to. As I was sitting in the car with my grandmother, I remember staring out the window, admiring the scorching sun, and listening to the steady panting of Lucy in the back. I looked up into the rearview mirror in hopes of seeing her smiling face, instilling confidence in me. I yawned and rolled onto my side, facing the passenger side of the car, and closed my eyes. While I slept, I remember reflecting on the story my grandfather on my mother's side of the family told me a few months ago. These grandparents only lived a few hours south of my family, so I visited them more often. My grandfather, who I will refer to as Papaw to help separate the two, is a short, overweight man who loved his grandchildren more than life itself, but he took a liking to me more than anyone else. I think the reason for this was because I took the time to listen to his story. Papaw had served in Vietnam when he was younger and had numerous stories to tell, a few of which were almost unsettling. He told me of creatures, the likes of which we humans have never seen before, living in the jungles there. He told me how the creature was more dangerous than the Viet Cong soldier or animal or anything like that. He also gave me survival tips in case I ever found myself stuck in the woods and felt unsafe. If you ever feel like you're being stalked by something, do not run. Prey runs. His voice echoed in my head. Don't ever scream, prey screams. If you see the creature stalking you, do not meet its gaze. Most animals take that as you challenging it, and while humans are extremely capable creatures, being able to rely on adrenaline to take down a lot of animals, there are creatures in this world that will butcher us without hesitating. His words seemed to burn themselves into my head. All you need to do is make yourself look as big as possible and walk out of its territory as fast as possible, while still walking. The last of his words echoed as I felt someone shaking my body a little bit. We're here, Josh. It's time to wake up, I heard my grandmother say while rocking my body back and forth. We both got out of the car, and I gave Lucy the treats I had promised her. As I stood outside the car, holding Lucy's leash, I breathed in the fresh air. It smelled quite different from Indiana, as it didn't carry the swamp smell Indiana's humidity usually carries with it. The air was much thinner, making me more confident that I wouldn't be able to run nearly as far as I would be able to at home. As we walked along the trail, my grandmother and I side by side with Lucy leading the way ahead of us, I made idle talk with her as we walked down the trail. The mountains were beautiful. While one would imagine it just to be a barren desert there are specific parts of arid trees and cacti that turn into a sort of forest that, combined with the beautiful blue skies and warm, almost boiling hot weather, made it a beautiful day to hike. As we continued to walk, I felt this sense of dread growing inside of me. The further we went, I looked down to Lucy, whose ears were now up and alert. Her body was low to the ground. She sensed something near us. I began to feel uneasy. The mountains of Arizona had many creatures inhabiting it, which include black bear, mountain lions, elk, deer, javelina, coyote, antelope, along with a lot more. I looked at my grandmother, who didn't seem bothered at all. This feeling of dread grew bigger and bigger, the weight of it sitting on my chest. Something was staring at me. I could feel it piercing my soul. I recalled my papa's advice and attempted to make myself look as big as possible, which admittedly wasn't very big at all. My goal was to make myself seem like I just wasn't worth the trouble. I looked around, trying to spot anything out of place, when I saw it. Peering around from behind a cactus was some sort of creature, covered in black fur. I couldn't see its body because it was behind the giant cactus, but I could tell it was easily as tall as this cactus was. This thing was easily 7 feet tall. I tried to avoid its gaze, not wanting to accidentally challenge it, but it felt as though my eyes snapped to them on their own. Its eyes were black. Not black, but more like they were completely void of light.
except for a small amount of yellow. Their eyes were beady and honestly soulless. The longer I looked, I noticed this giant hand reaching around the front of the cactus. Its hands was big enough to fit my head inside of it, and it had 2-inch claws at its fingertips. My head snapped away from it, and I looked ahead. "Grandma, we need to turn around and leave," I said, trying not to show fear, but wanting to get the urgency across. "Oh, but we haven't made it halfway yet," my grandmother said with a sound of sadness in her voice. I needed to come up with something to get us out of there. I looked down to Lucy, who was still walking forward, but her head wasn't looking ahead. She was looking at my right, the direction I saw the monster watching us from. "Grandma, I don't feel good. My stomach hurts and I feel nauseous. Can we please just go back? I promise we can take Lucy on a walk a little bit later," I said, trying to sound as sick as possible. "I guess that is fine," my grandmother said almost disappointingly, as she really wanted to take me to the peak this year. When we turned around, I made sure to keep myself between where I had seen the monster and my grandmother. As we walked back down, feeling the dread continued to get worse. This feeling of hopelessness, that you are no longer the scariest out there anymore. That at any moment's notice, something could decide to take you out of this world. When we got back to the car, I noticed we were still the only ones out there, which is strange, as it was usually a place to go hiking that was very popular. Lucy reluctantly got back into the SUV, preferring to stay outside and keep watch while my grandmother got in the car. While I finally got Lucy in, and I got myself in, I looked ahead on the trail. There was something, somewhat obscured by the foliage. It was a hulking animal of some sort. It had the face of a dog with its long black snout, but was easily bigger than any black bear I'd ever seen before. It stared at me, into my soul once again, but it never moved, only stared at me, which was almost scarier than it charging us. We went back home, where I sat in my room and immediately called my papa. Honestly, he would be the only one that would believe me. 2 days later, my grandmother told me she had seen something weird on the news of a few hikers going missing on that very same trail. She thanked me for convincing us to leave. I still have never, ever gone back to those mountains. Even as I've gotten bigger and more experienced hunting and such, I just don't trust it. I now carry a serrated pocket knife that my papa had given me for my 15th birthday everywhere I go. I will never forget the advice he had given me.
Thanks for listening to these creepy and downright strange cryptid encounter horror stories that'll freak you out tonight. If you enjoyed these stories, Swamp Folk, be sure to slap that like button, as it helps me out a ton. The more likes this episode gets, the more YouTube pushes it to fresh new eyes, and that helps the swamp grow its ever-expanding waters. Subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications as I upload multiple videos like this every single week, and I'll see you soon with another creepy episode.